All right, so this is our American Auto Wire kit for the C10. I've done a couple of these, put these together in a few different vehicles. Got big diagram for people who can't see, which works out pretty nice. It's pretty detailed. Everything you really need to know is in there. So what I like to do is try not to open every single thing and get it all confused, because inside these bags are harnesses within the bag. So try to do one thing at a time, but I like to lay everything all out. I'll put it all in the truck and get it situated where I want it before we start to do too much adjusting and try to plan everything out and lay it out. We're going to try and integrate as much stuff as we can into here. So obviously this truck here is on a Holly, and since it's on a Holly, it has a relay and a fuse for the injectors, the fuel pump. No, it doesn't have for the fuel pump. I can't remember if it's over 10 amps. I think they want you to use a separate relay for the fuel pump. Whatever. We're going to do all this through here. We're going to try to, and we'll try to go over all that, as we go with this. But so our first step is get this mounted in the truck and get this kind of laid out, how it's all going to go. All this stuff is labeled. If you've never messed with American Auto Wire before, all of their wires in here, I don't know if you can see that, but it's all labeled. So they do a pretty good job keeping everything squared away. And this is a factory OEM replacement, so this is supposed to fit all of your factory OEM switches and all of that jazz. So just keep that in mind. If there's any of this stuff that you want to change or whatnot, it's not very difficult to do so, but just bear in mind it is all factory stuff. So we'll probably end up taking the seat out because I don't need it in here, and it's always difficult. All right, you always got to be a little precautious when you have a freshly painted vehicle, because you definitely don't want to damage anything when you're putting this stuff in a freshly painted vehicle. Will get held in place over here inside, and it just screws the nut together. There should be another side of it too. These are your license plate lights. We're not going to be using that because we've got this aftermarket one there, so we're not going to be using that. I don't know if you could even see that. Yeah, right there. Extra pins, the whole spiel in there. All right, so I say we, Keen, I don't know about Keen. I'm horrible about making videos, but we got the fuse box mounted on the inside. We plugged everything in, and we're gonna start routing it. He's already pulled the wires to go through the back here, paired up the wires to go to the front. So we're gonna get all of these basically ran kind of where they need to go. When you get these kits, I don't know if everybody's is like this. I'm pretty sure they are, but you have, you know, high beam front, so it's right front turn, horn, headlight low beam, headlight high beam, and then your parking light. So you have to split these out. So you're gonna have to extend this out. It's plenty long enough. There's plenty of wire. You can pretty much run them wherever you want and you'll still have plenty of wire. So that's why we have separated out, because we're gonna run it where it needs to go. I'm gonna mark it so that I know where to split it off at. I'm gonna pull it off the truck, loom it, and then put it back on. And then at that point, I'll change the connectors out. These are some aftermarket headlights. So they have these connectors here, and I may or may not change these out for some like Deutsch DT connectors, just because they're smaller and you know, modern day. So we might be changing those out. It's a good possibility. Keen's dropping the headers because we got to put V-bands on them to weld up the exhaust. Something that we got to do. He got that whole header off and I never even heard one ting.
I can be careful when I drive.
All right. Nobody really wants to watch me do all this, so we're just gonna cut it right here and we'll come back. When we did put, I don't know where the camera is pointing, but so there's a rubber grommet behind here and then a washer on this side. Just that way, if they ever have to take this out for any reason, you won't see where the screw spun on the paint. Should keep it nice. Yeah, and that's that. Yeah, you used to work on some kind of NHRA car or something? You're just popping the headers off, leaving the plug wires there. Just efficiency, speed.
I mean, yeah, it looks okay, huh?
And you pulled it out through the top?
Yeah. This one will have to come
Go
from
through the bottom, yeah, for
this
sure.
one will come from the top.
No. Just gonna look and see where we're gonna run these wires in the frame rail. We're gonna have to run, so Dakota Digital, I haven't read these instructions, but I've put in a lot of these Dakota Digital units, and one of the things that they all say is run the fuel sending unit ground directly to the unit here. So the fuel sending unit is already in the American Auto Wire harness, and most likely I'll use the water temp or oil pressure wire that's already in the harness. I'll use that and I'll run it back as the fuel sending unit ground. That way I don't have to put any additional wires through the firewall or anything. Everything will be in the harness like it's supposed to be, and it'll come out. So somewhere in here, fuel, and then it says C owner's manual. So it'll tell you in here, and if you read the instructions good, it'll tell you. I didn't figure that out by reading the instructions. I figured that out by the gas gauge not working good, which prompted me to read the instructions. And at that point, I realized it tells you to ground it directly to the Dakota Digital box. So that's all that stuff. We don't need to take it all out. There's really no need. Once we get that all done, then we will start messing with the Holley and try to integrate as much as that we can through the factory fuse box. The harness itself is going to come through the underneath the truck and run up the transmission tunnel. But yep, this is stuff. keep this stuff in here so we don't lose nothing. Oh. All right. It'll probably run up like so. And then it's very likely I'll drill a hole in the frame rail there, run it through, or in the body line there, run it through, and then come along the frame rail. Probably stay on this side of the frame rail, to be honest. And we got to drop the tank anyway because we have to get the sending unit, so it won't be a problem. Yep, that's probably what's going to happen. So for the time being, I'm just going to run these lines and I'll zip tie them in all these little holes so I can get the length right, and that way I can work on splitting it in the back there while Keen's dropping that header. So we got stuff situated here, and let me get my phone so I can make sure the camera's pointed the right way. We got the American Auto wire harness pulled through here, how we're gonna route it. So from this point is gonna split to the left side and the right side. So I'm gonna mark it, it's just roughly laid in place in the routing that it's gonna go, so that we're able to mark it and then split everything off to the left side and the right side. We've done the same thing in the back. I'm not sure what this camera angle is gonna look like. Hopefully you can see, but I put a piece of tape here, so it's ran all the way in the frame rails, all the way forward. Again, and it's approximate routing. It's not gonna be under the frame rail, it's actually gonna be inside the frame rail. But at this point is where we're gonna start splitting everything. And I do have to run the brake wire back from the master cylinder. There's a brake pressure switch on there, so I have to add that. And I know I need to split that for both the left and the right brake at this point. So I'll show you how I like to split these. I don't know how other people do it, but I can show you how I do it. So we gotta do that, and then we have to mark up there where we can cut the wire for the fuel sending unit. And we also need to run the fuel pump power wires into the fuel tank. So that's gonna run along this also, and they'll drop out with the fuel sending unit. In addition to that is the ground for the fuel sending unit, which I had mentioned previously, that you need to ground the fuel sending unit to the Dakota Digital. So there's a couple of wires in here. If we can get this in here. There's a couple of wires that are in here. So this blue wire here and this green wire here, both of these are not going to be used for our purposes. So this is the water temperature for the factory gauges, and this is the oil pressure sensor for the factory gauges. We're not going to use either of those. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to run, most likely I'll run this green wire since it's green for ground, and I'm going to run this as the fuel tank sending unit ground wire, and then that way that is also going to be in our dash cluster plug. So like I had mentioned before, when I do these, in order to save as much headache as possible, I try to utilize everything I can out of these plugs for the factory cluster, and all of these wires will be there's plugs for them. So you can just plug the plug in that I need for each, and then instead of terminating the leads into the back of the factory cluster, I will terminate them into the Dakota Digital box. And that way, in the event that this dash ever comes out, or for whatever reason they put a factory dash in, all they have to do is buy a factory cluster plug harness from American Auto Wire and stick it in there, and they're gold. So We'll try to utilize as much factory stuff as we possibly can, just for simplicity purposes and also for cleanliness purposes. So that was what we did yesterday. Keen's doing stuff to the exhaust. You know what you're doing over there, Keen?
No clue.
Well, that's good. We're both in the same boat. So Keen is what happened is the exhaust. I don't know if we can take this camera off and see if I can show y'all what was going on with the exhaust. So the exhaust did not come through the middle of that hump. I don't know if you can really pick it up on camera, but it was favoring one side a lot. And we don't want it to do that. We want it to be right in the middle. So we need to kick it over ever so slightly and get it in the center of that hump where it belongs. And then we can make our X pipe just after that cross member. So that's what's going on over here.